Jack lost his job for helping an elderly woman, but her attractive 21-year-old granddaughter was a millionaire and did something unexpected. Comment what you thought of this story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and tell me what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story, and I want to get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The persistent winter rain beat against the windows of the Grand Sterling Tower's lobby, creating a grey curtain that blurred the view of New York's busiest avenue. Jack Sullivan adjusted his navy blue uniform for the 100th time that day, his brown eyes attentive to every movement in the gleaming marble hall. At 35, he carried on his broad shoulders not only the responsibility of ensuring the security of the luxury building, but also the weight of supporting a family that depended entirely on his security guard's salary. The cell phone vibrated in his vest pocket. A message from his younger sister. "Jack, Mom's in a lot of pain today. The meds ran out." He closed his eyes for a second, mentally calculating how much was left in his checking account. Payday was 5 days away, and the money would barely cover the overdue rent. His mother's arthritis medication would have to wait a few more days. "Sullivan!" The supervisor's harsh voice echoed through the lobby. "What are you here for? To play on your phone?" Mark Peterson approached with his chest puffed out, displaying the golden head of security nameplate as if it were a medal of honor. "Some directors are arriving soon. I want everything impeccable." "Yes, sir." Jack put the phone away, maintaining the erect posture he had learned in 5 years of military service. He knew Mark had it out for him ever since he refused to participate in a kickback scheme with vendors, but he needed this job. His dignity had a price, his family's well-being. That's when he saw her, a small, frail, elderly woman, standing in the middle of the lobby as if lost in time. Mrs. Eleanor Vance clutched a worn brown handbag against her chest, her faded blue eyes searching for someone or something among the hurried people entering and leaving the building. Her simple but impeccably clean clothes contrasted with the sophisticated environment around her. "Excuse me, young man." She approached Jack with hesitant steps, her trembling voice carrying a refined accent that had softened over decades in the city. "I'm looking for my granddaughter. We haven't seen each other in a long time, and I only have this address." Though she held out a yellowed piece of paper with delicate handwriting, Jack looked at the address and then at the lady's wrinkled face. The paper was years old. The building's numbering had changed. "Do you have her name, Mom? I can check if she still lives here." "Valerie Vance, a beautiful, intelligent girl." Mrs. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "She was just a little girl when her parents died. She must be in her early 20s now. My husband and I raised her, but then..." Her voice broke. "Sullivan!" Mark appeared again, this time more irritated. "What's this chatter? Ma'am, excuse me, but you need to go to the reception desk if you want information." The receptionist, a blonde young woman with long nails, he barely looked up from her magazine when Mrs. Eleanor approached. "We don't have anyone with that name here, and that address is wrong, see? This is a commercial building, not residential." Jack saw despair settle on the old woman's face. She returned to his side, her hands trembling. "I came from so far. I took 3 buses. I don't know what to do." Something stirred in Jack's chest. He remembered his own grandmother, who died when he was still a child, always repeating that kindness was the only wealth no one could steal. He glanced at Mark, who was talking with other guards, and made a decision that would change his life. "Mrs. Vance, I can help you. I'll check this address in other buildings in the area." He took the paper and studied it carefully. "Actually, I think I know the right place. It's about 3 blocks from here. But I don't have money for a taxi, son." Jack looked into his own pocket, where he kept the last few bills he had for the week. He didn't hesitate. "Leave it to me. I'll call a cab and accompany you there." 15 minutes later, he was in the back of a yellow cab next to Mrs. Eleanor, who gripped his hand with the surprising strength of someone finding unexpected hope. The cab driver, a middle-aged man with a grumpy face, complained about the traffic, while Jack worried about the time he was missing from work. The correct address was a high-end residential condominium on the Upper East Side. When they arrived, Jack helped Mrs. Eleanor out and accompanied her to the entrance, where a uniformed doorman received them with some suspicion. "We're looking for Miss Valerie Vance," Jack explained, showing the paper. The doorman checked the residence list. "She doesn't live here anymore. Moved out about 2 years ago. But I can call the building manager. He might have the new address." Half an hour later, after several calls and checks, they discovered that Valerie now lived in a duplex apartment in Soho. Jack spent more money on another cab, accompanying Mrs. Eleanor to the new address, where the doorman finally confirmed, "Ah, Valerie. Of course, I know her, but she's traveling for work. She'll only be back next week." Mrs. Eleanor's heart seemed to break. "A week? I can't stay in New York for a week. I have nowhere to sleep, no money." Jack felt a lump in his throat. He looked at his watch and realized he had been away from work for over 2 hours. Mark had certainly noticed his absence, but he couldn't abandon this lady now. "Does the doorman have Valerie's phone number?" he asked. "I do, but she asked me not to give it to anyone. A lot of people bother her." That's when Mrs. Eleanor had an idea. "I have a picture of her when she was little, and I can tell you things only a grandmother would know." She opened her bag and took out a faded photograph of a blonde, green-eyed girl. "She has a moon-shaped birthmark on her right thigh, and when she was little, she used to call her grandfather Papa Joe." The doorman was silent for a moment, clearly touched by the story. "All right, I'll call her and explain the situation. If she confirms these details, I'll pass on the message." The call lasted only a few minutes. When he hung up, the doorman smiled for the first time. "She wants to talk to you." He handed the phone to Mrs. Eleanor, who started to cry before even saying hello. "Grandma Eleanor, is that really you?" The voice on the other end was young, emotional, full of longing. "My God, I've looked for you for so long." The conversation lasted almost an hour. Tears, apologies, explanations about years of forced separation due to family problems. Jack stood discreetly aside, but he could see the happiness radiating from the old woman's face. When she finally hung up, Mrs. Eleanor turned to him with shining eyes. "Son, how can I ever thank you for what you did for me today? Valerie wants to talk to you." "With me?" Jack was surprised, but took the phone. "Hello?" The female voice was firm, polite, with a refined New York accent. "Are you the one who helped my grandmother?" "Yes, ma'am. Jack Sullivan." "Jack, I don't even know how to begin to thank you. My grandmother told me everything you did. Left your job, spent your own money." Her voice wavered a bit. "People like you are rare these days. It was nothing. Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't, believe me." There was a pause. "Listen, can I know where you work? I want to compensate you for what you spent today, and maybe—" "There's no need to compensate me for anything. I'm just happy I could help. Please, at least let me pay you back for the cab fare, and I'd like to meet you in person when I get back from my trip." Jack hesitated. Something in that woman's voice intrigued him, but he was in a hurry to get back to work. "I work at the Grand Sterling Tower in security, but seriously, you don't need to worry about me." "The Grand Sterling Tower? I know it." "All right, Jack. Thank you so much again, and please take care of my grandmother on her way back." When they returned to the building where it all began, it was almost 5 in the afternoon. Jack accompanied Mrs. Eleanor to the bus stop, making sure she boarded safely. She held his hand one more time. "May God bless you, my son. You have a heart of gold." Jack went back to work knowing he would face consequences. Mark was waiting for him in the lobby, his face red with anger. "Where were you? Gone for 3 hours. That's abandonment of post." "I can explain." "I don't want any explanations. The cameras showed you leaving with that old woman. Do you think this is a hotel? Come back tomorrow to get your things. You're fired." The words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. 3 hours of kindness had cost him the job that supported his family. As he cleared his belongings from the locker, he thought of his mother waiting for her medicine, his sisters counting on him, the rent due in 2 days. But when he remembered Mrs. Eleanor's smile as she spoke to her granddaughter, he knew he would do it all over again. Some things were worth more than the security of a salary. The problem was that his family couldn't eat dignity. 3 days after losing his job, Jack woke up before sunrise with the familiar weight of worry pressing on his chest. The small house in Queens, with its peeling walls and the roof that leaked in the living room, had never seemed so fragile as it did in that moment. From the next room came the persistent cough of his mother, Clara, who at 62 carried in her tired body the consequences of decades cleaning other people's houses. "Mom, how are you feeling?" He entered the room, finding her sitting on the bed, her swollen hands resting on her right knee. "Oh, my son, this pain won't leave me alone. It feels like there's ground glass inside my joint." She tried to smile, but a wince of pain betrayed her. "Have you managed to find another job yet?" Jack sat on the edge of the bed, avoiding his mother's direct gaze. For the past 3 days, he had pounded the pavement, faced immense lines at employment agencies, and filled out applications that seemed to disappear into the void of bureaucracy. His military experience and years in private security meant little without connections or an inside track. "I'm on it, Mom. Something will turn up soon." "Jack," the voice of Jessica, his 23-year-old sister, came from the kitchen, loaded with an anxiety she tried to hide. "An electricity bill came. It's past due." He closed his eyes, doing the math in his head. The electric bill, his mother's medicine, the rent due the next day, Jessica's college tuition that she insisted on pausing to help with expenses, and Chloe, the youngest at 17, who needed school supplies for her last year of high school. His severance pay would barely cover a week's worth of expenses. The cell phone rang at exactly 9 in the morning, an unknown New York number. Jack hesitated before answering. It could be a debt collector, but it could also be a job opportunity. "Hello? Jack, this is Valerie Vance." The female voice was the same one he had heard 3 days earlier, but now it seemed closer, more real. "Mrs. Eleanor's granddaughter." He moved away from his sisters, seeking privacy in the tiny backyard. "Hi, how are you? Did your grandmother get home safely?" "She did, thanks to you. Listen, I need to see you. Can I know where you live? Or would you prefer we meet somewhere?" "Look, you don't have to bother. Jack, please, I insist. And besides, I have a proposal for you." He felt his heart race. "What kind of proposal?" "It's better if we talk in person. Can you meet me today? I'm just getting back to New York this morning." 2 hours later, Jack was standing in front of a sophisticated coffee shop in the West Village, adjusting the dress shirt he had ironed 3 times to try to hide the fact that it was the only one he owned in good condition. The place was exactly the type of environment where he would never feel comfortable. Light wood tables, ornamental plants, a menu in English and French, customers talking on the phone about investments and international trips. "Jack," the voice came from behind him. When he turned, he felt as if the air had been knocked out of his lungs. Valerie Vance wasn't just pretty, she was stunning in a way that seemed almost unreal. Tall, with blonde hair that fell in natural waves over her shoulders, green eyes that contrasted with her lightly tanned skin. She wore a beige blazer over a white blouse and pants that probably cost more than his monthly salary. But what impressed him most was her smile. Genuine, warm, without any trace of the arrogance he expected to find. "Valerie!" He extended his hand, surprised by the firmness of her grip. "Thanks for coming. Shall we go inside?" They sat at a corner table, and Jack felt immediately out of place when the waiter brought a menu that looked more like an art catalogue. Valerie ordered an espresso. He, a simple black coffee, hoping it wouldn't be too expensive. "First, I want to thank you personally for what you did for my grandmother." Valerie leaned forward slightly, her eyes fixed on him. "She couldn't stop talking about you. An angel, and was how she described you. I just did what any decent person would do." "No, Jack, you did much more than that." Her voice grew more serious. "You lost your job because of my grandmother, didn't you?" He hesitated. "How did she know?" "Who told you that?" "I called the building yesterday. I spoke with your supervisor, a guy named Mark." Anger rose in Jack's chest. "You shouldn't have done that." "Why not? A man loses his job for doing a good deed, and I can't even know what happened." Valerie picked up her handbag, a leather piece he recognized as a very expensive brand. "Besides, that Mark is an idiot. He was rude to me on the phone, saying you were an irresponsible employee and other nonsense." And then a mischievous smile appeared on her face. "And then I introduced myself as the CEO of VM Holdings and asked if he knew that my company has a $5,000 a month cleaning contract with the building where he works." Jack's eyes widened. "You did what?" "Calm down. I didn't do anything to his job yet, but I made it clear that his attitude was inappropriate." She took a sip of her coffee, observing his shocked expression. "Jack, I need to tell you something. My grandmother didn't tell you who I really am, did she?" "She said you're her granddaughter." "I am, but I'm also the owner of a company that grosses $100 million a year." The sentence came out naturally, without pride or ostentation, just as a fact. "My grandparents raised me after my parents died in an accident. I inherited my grandfather's business when he passed away 3 years ago." Jack felt like he was on an emotional roller coaster. The woman in front of him, who didn't look a day over her early 20s, had just said she was a millionaire. "Why are you telling me this? Because I want to offer you a job." "No." "Then," the answer came out automatically, instinctively. "You haven't even heard what it is." "I don't need to. I don't want your charity." Valerie laughed, a crystal-clear sound that made several people in the coffee shop look in their direction. "Charity? Jack, you've known me for 15 minutes and you already think you know what kind of person I am? I know you're rich, I'm poor. You feel guilty about what happened and want to compensate me. You don't have to." "All right." She crossed her arms, her gaze becoming more determined. "Then let me ask you a question. You have sisters, right?" The change of subject caught him off guard. "I do." "Why?" "And your mother is sick." It wasn't a question. Jack felt a chill in his stomach. "How do you know that?" "Because when I called your phone the day before yesterday, a woman answered. She said she was your sister and that you had gone out to buy medicine for your mother." Valerie leaned forward again. "Jack, I'm no saint. I don't go around helping everyone I meet on the street. But when someone sacrifices their own livelihood to help my grandmother, I pay attention. And then I do my research. I find out that this person is a former soldier, worked 10 years at the same company, never had a complaint, supports his family alone, and was fired for doing a good deed." She paused, taking another sip of coffee. "And then I think, what kind of person would I be if I let that slide?" Jack remained silent, processing the information. Valerie had investigated his life. The feeling was both invasive and touching. "Look, I understand your pride. I really do. But just listen to the proposal before you refuse, okay?" She took a paper out of her bag and placed it on the table. "I need a corporate security manager for my companies, someone who understands both physical security and people, who has military experience, is discreet and reliable. Jack looked at the paper without picking it up. And the salary. $15,000 a month to start. Family health plan, meal allowance, company car, profit sharing at the end of the year. The world seemed to stop. $15,000 was more than he earned in 6 months as a guard. A health plan meant his mother could get the exams she had been postponing for years. A company car meant not having to wake up at 4 in the morning to catch 2 buses. "Why me?" His voice came out hoarse. "Because you proved you have character. Because I don't have time to test the honesty of candidates." Valerie leaned back in her chair. "And because my grandmother liked you. She has an incredible knack for judging people. And if I don't meet expectations, then you'll be fired like any other employee. This isn't charity, Jack. It's a job, and I expect results." He finally picked up the paper, reading the details of the proposal. It was all true. Salary, benefits, job description. His mind automatically calculated medicine for his mother, college for Jessica, school supplies for Chloe, a better house. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, but I need an answer by tomorrow. You start Monday if you accept." They spent a few more minutes talking about practical details. Valerie explained that he would have to accompany her to meetings, trips, social events, that he would need to wear a suit and carry himself according to the corporate environment, that there would be people who would question his presence and ability. "There's one more thing," she said as they stood up to leave. "My grandmother wants to see you again. Can I take you to her house on Sunday? If I accept the offer, regardless, she's grown fond of you." When they left the coffee shop, Valerie walked to a white BMW parked at the corner. Before getting in, she turned to him one more time. "Jack, can I give you some advice? Sometimes in life, opportunities appear that can change everything. The question isn't whether we deserve them or not. The question is whether we have the courage to seize them." He stood on the sidewalk, watching the car disappear into the heavy traffic of the village. In his pocket, the paper with the job offer seemed to weigh a ton. When he got home, he found his mother lying on the sofa, Jessica doing calculations on a piece of paper, and Chloe studying at the kitchen table. "Jack, we need to talk," Jessica said, showing him the sheet full of numbers. "We're not going to be able to pay for everything this month. I can put college on hold and—" "No." He took the paper out of his pocket, his hands trembling slightly. "Maybe you won't have to." That night, Jack lay awake late, staring at the ceiling of the room he shared with his sisters, thinking about the green-eyed woman who had appeared in his life like a hurricane disguised as an opportunity. Valerie Vance was everything he had never imagined finding: beautiful, rich, intelligent, powerful. And for some incomprehensible reason, she was offering him a chance to change not just his life, but his entire family's. The question he didn't want to ask himself, but which hammered in his mind, was simple and terrifying. What could a woman like her really want with a man like him? 6 months after accepting Valerie's proposal, Jack adjusted his navy blue tie in front of the mirror in the executive bathroom of the VM Holdings office. The Hugo Boss suit she had insisted he buy no longer felt strange on his body, but he was still surprised by his own reflection. The man staring back at him had the same sturdy physique as always, but now radiated a confidence that came not just from financial security, but from the certainty of doing a job that mattered. The transformation in his family's life had been radical. Clara now had physical therapy 3 times a week. Her medications were always on time, and she had even started smiling frequently again. Jessica not only continued college, but had secured an internship at a partner company of VM Holdings. Chloe wore new uniforms and had her own laptop for studying. The new house in Astoria, with 3 bedrooms and a backyard, was a palace compared to the cramped apartment they left. But what affected Jack the most wasn't the material comfort. It was the growing complexity of his feelings for Valerie Mendez. Working alongside her every day had proven to be an intense and contradictory experience. In business, Valerie was relentless, strategic, capable of making decisions involving millions of dollars with a coolness that sometimes frightened him. He had seen her negotiate contracts, fire incompetent executives, and expand the company into new markets with a determination that reminded him of a general planning a war. But there were moments, small, fleeting, when the executive mask slipped, revealing a vulnerability she hid from the world. Like the morning he found her crying in the office after a call with her aunt, who had questioned her ability to lead the company, being so young and inexperienced. Or the day she confessed that she didn't have a single real friend, only acquaintances interested in her social position. "Jack, can you come in here?" Her voice over the intercom pulled him from his thoughts. It was Monday, 9 in the morning, and he knew she had spent the weekend alone in her apartment, reviewing contracts and preparing for the board of directors presentation. When he entered her office, he found Valerie standing before the panoramic window overlooking Park Avenue, arms crossed, a tense expression on her face. She wore a black dress that enhanced her silhouette, her hair tied in an elegant bun, but there was something different about her posture. "We have a problem," she said, without turning around. "Clayton Thorne has scheduled a meeting for this afternoon. He says he has an important proposal." Jack felt his muscles tense automatically. Clayton Thorne was a 45-year-old businessman who had been circling Valerie for months like a patient predator. The owner of a construction company that competed for contracts with her companies, he used any pretext to show up at the office, always with oily smiles and invitations to business dinners. What kind of proposal? He wouldn't specify, but from his insistence, I imagine it's personal. Valerie finally turned, and Jack saw the irritation in her green eyes. "My assistant said he called 5 times yesterday. Do you want me to be present at the meeting?" "I do, and I want you to keep an eye on him. There's something about Clayton that bothers me, but I can't put my finger on it." At 3 in the afternoon, Clayton Thorne arrived at the office accompanied by 2 lawyers, a confident smile on his tanned face. Tall, with well-cut graying hair and an impeccable suit, he exuded the kind of calculated charm that Jack had learned to distrust during his years in security. "Valerie, my dear, you look radiant as always." Clayton leaned in to kiss her cheek, a gesture that lasted a second longer than was appropriate. "Clayton, are these your lawyers?" "Dr. Ribeiro and Dr. Santos. And this must be the famous Jack?" Clayton extended his hand, but his appraising look was not friendly. "I've heard a lot about you." "I imagine." Jack shook the offered hand, noting the excessive force of the grip, a primitive masculine test that did not intimidate him. They sat at the conference table, Valerie at one end, Clayton at the other, his lawyers beside him, Jack strategically positioned where he could observe everyone present. "Well, I'll get straight to the point," Clayton began, opening a leather folder. "I have a proposal that can solve several problems your company has been facing." "What problems?" Valerie's voice was controlled, but Jack noticed the tension in her shoulders. "The board of directors has been questioning some of your decisions. I've heard there's pressure for you to accept external partners." Clayton smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And then there's this delicate issue regarding your personal life." The air in the room seemed to thicken. Valerie leaned forward. "What delicate issue?" "Oh, my dear, you know how our circle is. People talk." Clayton's gaze briefly slid to Jack. "There are rumors about inappropriate relationships, questionable choices of advisors." Jack felt anger rise like volcanic lava, but kept his expression neutral. Valerie, however, did not hide her irritation. "Get to the point, Clayton." "Very well. I'm proposing a merger between our companies. 50-50%. You remain as CEO. I take on the role of Executive Vice President. He pushed some documents across the table, and to seal the deal and calm the speculation, I suggest we announce our engagement. The silence that followed was deafening. Jack saw Valerie turn pale, her fingers clenching into a fist on the table. Are you asking me to marry you? Her voice came out low. Dangerous. I'm offering an elegant solution to our mutual problems. My company needs your technology. Yours needs my stability, and we would both benefit from a strategic personal alliance. A strategic alliance. Valerie repeated the words as if they had a bitter taste. Is that how you see a marriage? It's how intelligent people in our position see relationships, my dear. Love is a luxury for those without corporate responsibilities. Jack watched Valerie struggle to maintain her composure. He knew her signs well enough to know she was furious, but also calculating the pros and cons of the proposal with the analytical mind that had made her a brilliant businesswoman. And if I refuse? Clayton's smile grew darker. Well, that would be a shame, especially considering that some members of your board have already expressed interest in the idea. And there's also the matter of the municipal contracts that are up for grabs. It would be complicated if you found yourself competing with me without adequate support. The veiled threat hung in the air like toxic smoke. Jack realized exactly what was happening. Clayton wasn't making a proposal. He was executing a takeover. He had orchestrated pressure on the board, probably promised advantages to some members, and was now using his position of power to force Valerie to accept his terms. I need time to analyze this, Valerie said finally. Of course, but not too much time. The market doesn't wait, and opportunities have an expiration date. Clayton stood up, followed by his lawyers. Shall we say by Friday? When they left, Valerie remained motionless for several minutes, her gaze lost on the papers Clayton had left on the table. Jack approached slowly. Val? She looked up, and he saw tears she refused to let fall. He has me cornered, Jack. If I don't accept, he could destroy everything my grandfather built. And if you do accept, I become a minority partner in my own company and the wife of a man who sees marriage as a merger of assets. Jack felt something break inside his chest. The idea of Valerie married to Clayton, subjected to his manipulations, being touched by him. It was unbearable. There has to be another way. Maybe, but I can't see it. She stood up, walking to the window again. You know what's most ironic? Clayton is right about one thing. I have been making questionable choices. What do you mean? Valerie turned, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him swallow hard. Hiring you was the most impulsive decision of my life. It wasn't just gratitude for what you did for my grandmother. Since that day in the coffee shop, She stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. What matters is that now you could get dragged into all of this. Val, what are you trying to say? That maybe it's better for you to leave the company before things get more complicated. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Are you firing me? I'm protecting you. From what? From me. The confession came out in a whisper. Because what I feel for you goes far beyond gratitude or professional friendship. The world seemed to stop. Jack looked at Valerie, vulnerable, powerful, scared, brave, and knew he had reached a point of no return in his life. He could accept the dismissal, return to the safety of mediocrity, protect his family from the storms to come, or he could fight for what was growing between them, even knowing it would be the most difficult battle he had ever faced. And what if I don't want to be protected? He asked, taking a step toward her. Jack, and what if I feel the same way? She closed her eyes, as if his words caused physical pain. Then we're in an impossible situation, because I can't ask you to face what's coming. Clayton won't just go after the company. He'll go after you, your family, everything he can use as leverage. Let me decide what I can and can't face." When she opened her eyes again, there was a new determination in her gaze. "All right, but if we're in this together, it's for real. No half measures, no games, no lies. You need to know exactly what you're getting into." Jack moved closer, until he was near enough to smell her subtle perfume, to see the small freckles her makeup didn't completely hide. "Then tell me everything." And that afternoon, Valerie told him. About the constant pressure from the board, about the uncles who questioned her every decision in the hope of inheriting part of the company, about the loneliness of carrying an empire at 21, about how she had been attracted to him since their first meeting, fighting against feelings she considered inappropriate given the difference in their positions. When she finished, it was past 7 in the evening. The office was empty, just the two of them illuminated by the city lights that were beginning to twinkle outside. "And now," Jack asked, "now we figure out how to defeat Clayton without destroying everything in the process." Valerie smiled for the first time that day. "Do you accept the challenge?" He extended his hand to her. "I accept." When their fingers touched, Jack knew there was no turning back. They were about to declare war against forces much greater than themselves, betting everything on a feeling that had barely begun to blossom. It was reckless, risky, possibly suicidal, and he had never felt more alive. The discovery that would change everything happened on a rainy Thursday, 3 weeks after Clayton's ultimatum. Jack had been in the office since 5 in the morning, analyzing the contracts Clayton had mentioned, when his cell phone rang. On the other end of the line was the nervous voice of Marcus, a former colleague from his security guard days. "Jack, man, I need to talk to you. It's about this Clayton Thorne guy." "What about him?" "I can't talk on the phone. Let's meet at John's bar in the East Village. It's important." An hour later, Jack was sitting at a table in the back of the simple bar, waiting for Marcus to arrive. When he saw him enter, he immediately noticed that his friend was scared. Marcus looked around several times before sitting down, his hands trembling slightly. "Man, you've gotten yourself into some deep trouble. This Clayton guy is dangerous." "Explain." "Remember the company where I work now? We do security for several large firms. Well, one of them is Clayton's construction company." Marcus lowered his voice. "Last week I was doing the night round when I heard him talking in his office with 2 guys. I thought it was strange because it was already midnight." Jack leaned forward. "And then he was talking about Valerie, about you, about how he was going to force her to accept the merger." Marcus took his cell phone out of his pocket. "I recorded part of the conversation. I wasn't supposed to be listening, but..." The audio quality was poor, but Clayton's voice was perfectly understandable. "The board is already bought. Half of them will vote for the merger even if she resists. And if she still doesn't accept, we have the material on her little boyfriend." A second, deeper voice. "What kind of material?" "Family's criminal records, connections to drug trafficking in the neighborhood where he grew up, some compromising photos that can be created, enough to destroy her reputation and his." The anger Jack felt was so intense he could barely continue listening, but the worst was yet to come. "And there's one more thing," Clayton's voice continued. "The guy's mother's health plan. I found out there's a clause that can be activated to cancel the coverage. If he doesn't stay away from Valerie, the old lady will be without treatment." Marcus turned off the phone, his eyes fixed on Jack. "Man, this guy is a psychopath. He investigated your whole family, your whole life, and from what I understood, he's already started executing the plan." Jack felt his blood run cold. "What do you mean?" "A notification arrived at your house yesterday. Your mother called the health insurance company and they said there are irregularities in your employment contract. The world seemed to collapse. Jack picked up the phone and called home, his hands shaking. Jessica answered on the first ring. Jack? Good, you called. Some letters arrived here. Mom is worried. What letters? From the health insurance, the bank, the condo association, saying there are outstanding issues in your name, problems with documentation. Jack closed his eyes, feeling Clayton's trap closing around his family. The man wasn't just threatening his career, he was attacking everything he loved most. Jess, listen carefully. Don't sign anything, don't agree to anything. I'm on my way home now. When he arrived at the house in Astoria, he found his family gathered in the living room, piles of papers scattered on the table, all with worried expressions. Clara held a letter with trembling hands. My son, what is happening? They're saying here that you falsified documents to get the health plan. It's a lie, Mom. Someone is trying to hurt us. But why? Asked Chloe, her eyes wide. Jack looked at the three women who were his reason for living and made the most difficult decision of his life. He couldn't tell them the whole truth, but he had to protect them. It's complicated. It has to do with my job, but I'm going to solve it. That night, alone in his room, Jack called Valerie. She answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting for his call. Jack, did something happen? Val, you need to know something. Clayton isn't just threatening you. He went after my family. He told her about Marcus's recording, about the letters, about the veiled threats. When he finished, the silence on the other end of the line lasted so long, he thought she had hung up. Val, I'm going to kill that son of a bitch. Her voice was filled with a fury he had never heard before. Going after you is one thing. Threatening your family is something else entirely. What are we going to do? We're going to war. For real this time. The next morning, Valerie arrived at the office with a different energy. Jack found her in the conference room, surrounded by stacks of documents, laptop open, phone in hand. She had assembled a team of lawyers, private investigators, and financial analysts. Clayton made a mistake, she said as Jack entered. He underestimated two things, my ability to react and the amount of dirt he himself has hidden. What kind of dirt? For starters, I found out how he managed to influence half of my board. Direct bribery, promises of contracts, blackmail in 2 cases. She showed him a folder full of photographs and documents. And there's more, tax evasion, workers in illegal conditions, connections with corrupt politicians. How did you get all this so quickly? Jack, I may be young, but I'm not naive. I've been investigating Clayton for months. I was just saving the information to use at the right moment. A fierce smile appeared on her face, and now is the right moment. The counterattack was swift and merciless. Valerie used her contacts in the press to leak information about Clayton's irregularities, triggered an IRS audit with evidence of tax evasion, and most importantly, presented the evidence of bribery attempts to the district attorney's office. But the decisive move came when she called an extraordinary meeting of the board of directors. Jack was present, strategically positioned at the back of the room, when Valerie entered with a confidence that radiated power. "Gentlemen of the board," she began, her firm voice echoing through the silent room, "I have called this meeting to address an attempted takeover of this company." Murmurs began immediately. Clayton, who was present as a special guest, maintained a neutral expression, but Jack saw the tension in his shoulders. "I have here evidence that some members of this board were approached with illegal offers to vote in favor of a merger that does not benefit our company." Valerie activated the projector, showing photographs of secret meetings, bank statements, recorded conversations. Chaos erupted in the room. Accusations flew from one side to the other. Some board members tried to justify themselves, others demanded explanations. In the midst of the confusion, Clayton stood up. "This is absurd. Valerie is desperate, making up stories to Mr. Thorne." Valerie's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You have been asked to leave, now. I'm not going anywhere. I have rights." That's when Jack moved. Silently, he approached Clayton, his imposing physical presence making the businessman take a step back. "You heard the CEO," Jack said, his voice low but filled with military authority. "It's time to leave." For a moment, the two men stared at each other in silence. Clayton was powerful, influential, used to intimidating others, but Jack had been born on the streets, survived the army, and faced situations Clayton couldn't even imagine. The difference between them was simple. Clayton bought respect, Jack earned it. "This isn't over," Clayton muttered as he passed Jack, but his voice trembled slightly. "For you, it is," Jack replied, not needing to raise his voice to sound threatening. When Clayton left, Valerie regained control of the meeting. One by one, she presented the evidence, dismantled the bribery attempts, exposed the lies. At the end of 2 hours, 3 board members had resigned, 2 were under investigation, and the rest voted unanimously to keep Valerie as CEO and reject any merger proposal with Clayton's company. But the most important victory came a week later, when the artificial problems created against Jack's family were resolved. The health plan was reinstated with apologies from the provider, the bank notifications were cancelled, and Clayton, facing multiple investigations, discreetly disappeared to Miami. On the night of the final victory, Jack and Valerie were alone in her office, the city lights twinkling outside like terrestrial stars. They had been through a war together, emerged stronger, more united, more certain of their feelings. "Do you know what this means?" Valerie asked, approaching him slowly. "That Clayton won't bother us anymore. That now we are free to be who we really are, without blackmail, without external pressures, without fear." She stopped right in front of him, her green eyes shining with a mixture of desire and determination. "I love you, Jack. I've loved you since that afternoon in the coffee shop. I love you for your kindness, for your strength, for the way you protect those you love." The words he had been holding back for months finally found a voice. "I love you too, Val, and it's not gratitude, it's not self-interest, it's not because you changed my life financially, it's because you are the most incredible woman I have ever met." When they kissed, it was with the pent-up passion of those who had fought against fate and won. It was the kiss of 2 warriors who found peace in each other's arms, of 2 people who discovered that true love knows no social barriers when it is built on a solid foundation of respect, admiration, and companionship. 6 months later, in a simple but elegant ceremony at a church in Soho, Jack Sullivan and Valerie Vance were married before their united families, true friends, and Mrs. Eleanor, who wept with happiness in the front row, proud to have been the unwitting catalyst for this unlikely and perfect union. The company continued to grow under their joint leadership. She as CEO, he as Vice President of Security and Human Relations. Together, they created social programs that benefited disadvantaged communities, hiring policies that prioritized competence over connections, and a business model that proved that financial success and social responsibility could go hand in hand. And when, 2 years later, Valerie discovered she was pregnant, Jack knew his life had come full circle. From the man who lost his job for helping an old woman to the successful businessman married to the woman he loved, carrying in her womb their first child who would be raised in the abundance of true love. The social difference that once seemed insurmountable had become irrelevant in the face of the transformative power of a feeling born of kindness, which grew in adversity and flourished in shared victory. Jack and Valerie had proven that in contemporary America, as in anywhere in the world, genuine love was still the most powerful force to overcome any obstacle. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.